The ancient diesel engine of the tractor thrummed through the soles of Lakin's boots, a familiar vibration against the turned soil of his land. He gripped the wheel, his knuckles scarred and brown from the sun, and watched the last line of corn fall to the harvester. The air was thick with the scent of cut stalks and rich, damp earth. Then a shadow fell. It was not a cloud. It was a vast, oppressive darkness that swallowed the sun, silencing the birds and casting the valley in a cold, unnatural twilight. Lakin stopped the tractor. The engine's rumble was the only sound in a world that had suddenly held its breath. He looked up. Above him, blotting out the sky, hung the belly of a starship. It was a flat, weaponized gray, bristling with turrets and engines that burned a silent, angry blue. Dozens more descended around it. Smaller, sharper craft that began to peel away, vectoring toward the valley floor. The invasion of Earth had begun, and it had chosen his farm as its landing ground. Lakin put the tractor back in gear and continued his harvest. From the command viewport of the Exelos dropship Hegemonie's Will, General Leah Lane watched the planet's surface resolve. Her vibrant green skin was luminous in the glow of the holographic displays. Her violet eyes, sharp and analytical, scanned the topography. "Landing zone E Epsilon is secure, General," her tactical officer Kalen reported, his voice flat. "Atmosphere is high oxygen, high pollen, but within tolerance. No organized resistance." "As expected," Leah Lane said, her voice a low contralto. She gestured to the sprawling valley below. "This Harmony Valley is strategically insignificant. No major population, no military assets. It will serve as an excellent primary command post." She watched the small, primitive vehicle crawling across a field. A single, defiant puff of black smoke rose from its exhaust. One native structure, one bipedal. He appears to be farming. Kalen frowned. He is not fleeing? He is ignoring us. Leo Lane felt a strange flicker of something. Not annoyance. Not yet. "Send out the sensor drones. I want a full sweep. Then, dispatch a vanguard unit, secure the structure, and detain the native." The dropship landed with a heavy, ground-shaking thud. Ramps hissed open, and silver-white armored soldiers, all standing a head taller than a human, fanned out in perfect, lethal formations. Lakin finished his row, switched off the tractor, and slid from the seat. The silence was heavy, broken only by the metallic clang of alien boots on his gravel driveway. He walked to his farmhouse, the rifle he kept above the door feeling heavy and familiar in his hands. He didn't bother to chamber around. He stood on his porch as the first 3 Exelos troopers approached, their energy weapons raised. They were tall, armored, and utterly alien. "By the authority of the Exelos hegemony, this territory is annexed. You will surrender for processing." Lakin rested the butt of his rifle on the wooden porch. "This territory is mine. You're trespassing." The soldier tilted its head. "Your non-compliance is irrelevant. Lower your weapon." Lakin didn't move. "You lower yours. You're scaring my livestock." The trooper's comms unit crackled with static. He tapped his helmet. "Comms are jammed. Local interference." "That would be the valley," Lakin said. "Atmospherics get funny in the canyon. Always have. I'd suggest you leave before you get lost." In her command center, Leo Lane watched the feed flicker and die. The drones she had sent out were already dark, their last transmissions a blur of static and something that looked like straw. "Report," she snapped. "Interference is localized, General, and the drones, they seem to have been disabled by high-energy electromagnetic pulses. From the natives' scarecrows?" Leo Lane's violet eyes narrowed. She brought up the feet of the farmer on his porch. He was just standing there, a single, immovable object. "He's baiting us." "Insignificant," Kaelin said. "Perhaps." Leolane felt the corner of her mouth quirk. "Send the full squad. Non-lethal. I want to speak to this farmer." The squad advanced. Lakin stepped back inside, kicked a heavy wooden bar into place across the door, and walked to his basement. The soldiers surrounded the house, weapons high. "Breach," the squad leader ordered. A trooper slammed a boot against the door. It held. He slammed it again. From the ground beneath them, a low rumble began. The Exelos patrol, trained for urban warfare and planetary assaults, had no reference for the sudden, violent eruption of an automated silo borer's diversionary auger. The earth in the center of the squad erupted in a geyser of mud and rock. It was not an explosion, it was a relocation. The soldiers were thrown back, their armor fouled, their sensors blinded by a thick, precise spray of liquid manure from irrigation heads Lakin had replumbed. When the mud settled, the farmhouse was silent. The front door was still barred. "He's in the walls," one soldier shouted. "Negative," the squad leader growled, wiping his visor. "He's gone. Check the perimeter." Leolane watched the chaos with a cold, growing fascination. The bipedal was gone. Vanished. The only sign he had been there was a message carved deep into the mud-caked armor of their forward scout. "My land. Find him," Leolane ordered, her voice dangerously soft. "Find this human." A new game had begun. Over the next 4 days, Harmony Valley became a tactical nightmare. Lakin, who had lived his entire life learning the valley's secrets, turned it into a weapon. He didn't fight the Exelos, he fought their technology. Leolane's advanced armored walkers designed to cross radioactive rubble found themselves bogged down in glutinous, ankle-deep mud. Lakin had simply diverted the main irrigation channel into the staging field during the night. The heavy machines sank to their chassis, their engines whining in protest. Her sensor grids, capable of spotting a life form from orbit, were systematically blinded. Lakin used his agricultural sprayers, repurposed and loaded with a highly specific indigenous pollen, to create dense sensor-proof fog banks that rolled through the canyons on predictable air currents. The Exelos troopers, their visors useless, were reduced to moving blind, and they moved slowly. "He is a pest, General," Vestra hissed, her purple hair cut short. She was more aggressive. "This single primitive is delaying the entire sector conquest, requesting permission for a localized orbital strike. Burn him out." "Denied," Leolane said, her eyes fixed on the holographic map. Red icons blinked, indicating another lost patrol. Not destroyed, just lost. Their comms were jammed, their navigation systems fed false data, sending them on circles through the dense, uncharted woods. "He is not just a pest, he is an artist." "General?" "He understands tactical denial. He hasn't killed a single soldier. He is disabling us. He's hurting us. He's making us look like fools." Leolane was infuriated. She was also deeply, profoundly intrigued. This farmer was a ghost, a force of nature that anticipated every one of her moves. She had to know him. "I will lead the next
"Patrol myself," Leolane announced. Kaelin looked up, alarmed. "General, that is unwise. Your place is here. My place is on the battlefield, and this farmer has just declared my command center the battlefield." She stripped off her formal uniform, replacing it with the form-fitting silvery white armored suit of a vanguard officer. It clung to her lean, athletic frame, amplifying her predatory grace. She took an energy rifle, clipped it to her back, and strode to the dropship ramp. She found the downed scout drone within an hour. It was where Lakin wanted her to find it. The trap was obvious. A pressure plate, a kinetic net. It was insulting in its simplicity. "He thinks I am a fool," she whispered, disarming it with a precise blast from her sidearm. "No," a voice said from the trees above her. "I think you're cautious, but you're also proud." Lelaine snapped her rifle up, firing into the canopy. There was no one there. A decoy. She spun, but she was too late. A heavy, articulated metal arm, the limb of a repurposed hay baler, swung out from the brush like a battering ram. It didn't aim for her, it aimed for her rifle. The weapon was smashed from her grip, sent spinning into the undergrowth. She drew her sidearm, but Lakin was already on her. He moved not with a soldier's trained precision, but with a farmer's brute force economy. He didn't try to disarm her. He slammed his entire body into hers, using his weight to pin her against the massive trunk of an oak tree. The air was driven from her lungs. Her helmet, useless at this range, was knocked aside. For the first time, they were face to face. He was massive, solid, and smelled of sweat, soil, and pine. His hazel eyes were steady, analyzing her with the same intensity she had used on him. His calloused hand was not on her weapon, but on her wrist, holding it with crushing, effortless strength. "You're beautiful," he said, his voice a low rumble, "for an invader." Lelaine, High General of the Hegemony, was pinned. She snarled, a low, alien sound, and brought her knee up, aiming for his groin. He anticipated it, his thigh blocking hers, the impact hard and intimate. His body pressed her deeper into the bark. "And you're strong," she hissed, her violet eyes blazing, "for a primitive." The air crackled between them, thick with violence and something else, something she hadn't felt in decades, a primal electric pull. He was not afraid of her, he just held her, their chests heaving, their faces inches apart. "My land," he repeated, his breath warm on her green skin. And then he was gone. He released her and vanished into the brush with the speed that belied his size. Lelaine was left gasping against a tree, her heart hammering, her entire body humming from the contact. She returned to her command center, ignoring the stares of her crew. "General," Kalen asked, noting the dirt on her suit and the flush on her cheeks. "Double the patrols," Lelaine ordered, her voice a low growl. "And bring me my personal field kit. I'm moving my command sphere to the front line. I will hunt him down myself." The chase became Lelaine's singular focus. She set up a small, mobile command tent near the edge of Lakin's ruined fields, a move that bordered on tactical insanity. She began to track him alone, obsessed. She was a hunter, and this human was the most dangerous, exhilarating prey she had ever encountered. She found the traces he left for her. A deliberately broken branch, the faint scent of wood smoke from a hidden flue, a spent shotgun shell placed carefully on a stone. He was leading her, drawing her deeper into his world, and she was letting him. Lakin watched her from the ridges. He saw her move, not like her soldiers' clumsy soldiers, but with a lethal, alien grace. Her purple hair was a splash of vibrant color against the green of his valley. He saw her frustration, her intelligence. He watched her disable the simple snare he'd left, a flicker of a smile on her face. He was testing her, and she was testing him. The game had become intensely personal. He set a new trap now, more complex, a non-lethal pitfall, carefully covered, on a trail he knew she would take. He waited. She moved down the trail, her violet eyes scanning every shadow. She was magnificent. She spotted the trap. Her boot hovered over the trigger. She looked up, directly at his hiding place, and smiled. Then she deliberately stepped on it. The ground gave way. Lakin burst from cover, expecting to find her dangling in a net. Instead, he found her standing at the bottom of the shallow pit, her sidearm leveled at his chest. "You're predictable, farmer," she said, her voice smooth. "And you're a cheater, General." He was 20 feet away. He had misjudged. She had him. "My soldiers will be here in minutes," she said, her finger steady on the trigger. "I know. Surrender, Lakin." He froze. She had learned his name. He hadn't told her. She had been studying him, just as he had been studying her. "You're coming alone," he stated. A calculated risk. You're not going to shoot me. Her violet eyes narrowed. What makes you so certain, human? Because you're not a butcher. You're a general. And more than that. He took a step closer. He was 10 feet away. You're curious. You want to know how I'm doing it. I know how. You are a clever irritant. No. He took another step. He was 10 feet away. You want to know why. She didn't fire. The air was electric. The sensual dance of their first encounter returned, heavier this time, freighted with obsession. He saw the slight flare of her nostrils, the quickening of her breath. She was feeling this, just as he was. Before she could speak, a communicator on her wrist chirped. A sharp, bureaucratic voice cut through the air. General Lane, this is Political Officer Corvus. Your delays in this sector are unacceptable. The hegemon is displeased. You will cease this field observation and begin planetary cleansing protocols at once. Corvus out. The line went dead. The silence in the forest was deafening. Lane looked at Lakin, her expression unreadable. The hunter was gone. The executioner was back. Surrender, Lakin. That was your last chance. No. Then I will burn this valley to the ground, she whispered, her voice filled with a sudden terrible finality. She raised her pistol, but Lakin was already smiling, a grim, sad expression, looking not at her, but at the sky. What? You can't burn what's already flooding. He turned and sprinted, not away from her, but deeper into the canyon. Lane glanced up. The sky was a strange, bruised yellow, but her suit's atmospheric sensors reported no major storm. She dismissed his words as a primitive superstition and fired a warning shot that seared the dirt at his heels. Run, human. It only delays the inevitable. She began her pursuit, but her focus was broken. The political officer's threat had changed the rules. The game was over. Lane was enraged, at Corvus for his interference, at the farmer for his defiance, at herself for her hesitation. She pushed her advantage, calling in her elite capture squad, led by the ruthless Vestra. He's cornered, General. Vestra snarled over the comms as her troops fanned out through the narrow riverbed. Nowhere left to run. Non-lethal, Vestra, Lane ordered, her voice sharp as she ran, leaping over boulders with practiced ease. As you command, Vestra replied, her tone implying she would obey the letter, not the spirit of the law. Lakin was scrambling up the side of the canyon, moving with a desperate, familiar speed. He knew this path. He knew what was coming. He glanced back. Lane was close, her green skin slick.
Rain that had begun to fall, a cold, fine mist. "You can't escape, Lycan," she shouted, her voice echoing off the wet stone. "I'm not trying to escape," he yelled back. "I'm trying to survive. You need to get your people out of the riverbed, now." Lane faltered. The sincerity in his voice was raw. She looked at her tactical display. Barometric pressure was stable. No storm. "He is lying to divide us, General," Vestra shouted. And then the sky opened. It was not rain. It was a deluge, a solid wall of water, a phenomenon unique to Harmony Valley, where the high peaks funneled atmospheric moisture into a single catastrophic release. The Xylo sensors, calibrated for standard planetary weather, hadn't seen it coming. "Vestra, evacuate the canyon," Lane screamed. "All forces, get to high ground, now!" But it was too late. A roar like a dying god filled the air as a wall of water, mud, and debris tore through the canyon. It caught Vestra's squad, sweeping them away like leaves. Lycan had reached a dark opening in the rock face, an old mine shaft his great-grandfather had cut. He turned, his face a mask of horror, and saw Lane scrambling, her boots finding no purchase on the slick, collapsing rock. She was going to be swept away. He lunged, grabbing her armored wrist. He pulled her with all his strength, her momentum and his, carrying them both backward, tumbling into the black, dusty maw of the mine. A second later, a surge of water and rock slammed into the cliffside, and the entrance of the mine collapsed, sealing them inside.
They were plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. The only sound was the terrifying muffled roar of the floodwaters outside, and the harsh, ragged sound of their own breathing. Leah Lane landed hard, her head striking the rock wall. Her systems flickered and died, her comms silenced. She was bruised, disoriented, and blind. She lashed out, a purely reflexive attack, her fist connecting with his shoulder. Lycan grunted, catching her arm before she could strike again. He pinned her, his body pressing hers against the damp, uneven floor. "Stop," he ordered, his voice low and urgent. "It's over. We're trapped." "Get off me, primitive," she snarled, struggling against his superior weight. "I just saved your life, General." He felt something warm and wet on his hand. He'd touched her face. He brought his fingers to his nose. The coppery scent of blood. "You're hurt," he said. He released her arms, his hands moving to her head, his touch suddenly practical, gentle. "Your helmet's gone. You're bleeding." Leah Lane froze. The shift from violence to care was so sudden, it disarmed her more than any weapon. His calloused thumbs probed the gash on her temple, his touch surprisingly deft. "It's shallow," he diagnosed in the dark, "but it'll bleed. Hold still." She flinched as he tore a strip of cloth from his own shirt. He pressed it firmly against the wound. "Hold this. Pressure." She did, her hand covering his, their fingers interlaced over the wound. They were sealed in. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth, old metal, and something else. Leah Lane's alien scent, sharp and metallic, and Lycan's, all sweat and soil. In the absolute dark, their other senses screamed to life. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, the solid wall of his chest just inches from hers. She could hear the steady, calm rhythm of his breathing, a stark contrast to the hammering of her own heart. "Where are we?" she whispered, her voice stripped of its command. "The old Lucky." "A ship?" "A mine. My great-grandfather dug for copper here. These tunnels run for miles. But this flood? They're not stable." The ground rumbled, and a shower of dust and pebbles rained down on them. Leah Lane's breath hitched. She, who had led fleets against fortress worlds, felt a raw, primal fear. "You're afraid," he stated. It wasn't an accusation. "I am a Xylos general. We do not feel fear." "Right." He shifted, his arm brushing her side. "That's why you're shaking." She couldn't deny it. She was cold, her suit's heating elements dead. He was a furnace beside her. "You knew this was coming. The flood. I've lived here my whole life. The sky turns yellow, the air gets quiet. You've got 10 minutes to find high ground. I tried to warn you." "My sensors?" "Your sensors don't know this valley. I do." There was a long silence, filled only by the rumble of the storm. "My squad," Leah Lane said, her voice hollow. "Vestra." "They were in the kill box," Lycan said with grim voice. "No one could have survived that." Leah Lane felt a coldness that had nothing to do with the mine. She had led them to their deaths. Her obsession with this one man had doomed her squad. "This is your fault," she hissed, her grief turning to rage. "My fault? You brought an army to my home. You threatened to burn my world. I just fought back." He was right. The weight of her command, her choices, pressed down on her. Here in the dark, she was not a general. She was just Leah Lane, wounded, lost, and trapped with her enemy. He sighed, the sound loud in the small space. "We can either kill each other down here, or we can try to get out. I know a way, maybe." He began to move, his hands feeling the wall. "Stay close," he said, "and don't touch anything. These old supports are rotten." She reached out, her hand finding not the wall, but his arm. It was solid, covered in a thin layer of grit, the muscle beneath tense. He paused. She didn't let go. "I can't see," she whispered, the admission costing her more than he could know. He said nothing for a moment. Then his hand found hers, his calloused fingers wrapping around her slender green ones. "Then follow my lead." The mine was a claustrophobic hell. The air grew tinier, warmer, as they moved deeper into the earth, Lycan guiding them by touch alone. He seemed to have a sixth sense for the tunnels, his hand on the wall, feeling for changes in the rock, the subtle shifts in the damp air. Leah Lane, stripped of her technology and her rank, was reduced to a state of total dependency. Her survival rested in the hands of the man she had come to kill. They had to crawl through a narrow fissure, the rock pressing in on all sides. Lycan went first, his broad shoulders barely clearing the gap. "You have to follow," he said, his voice echoing back to her. "It's the only way." Leah Lane hesitated, the rock face tight against her chest. She pushed forward, her armor scraping, and then she was stuck. A spike of pure panic, cold and sharp, lanced through her. I can't move," she gasped, her voice tight. "Yes, you can. Exhale, make yourself small." She tried, but the fit was too tight. She was wedged. The darkness felt like it was crushing her. "Lycan!" She felt his hands on her ankles. "I've got you. I'm going to pull. Wriggle when I do. Now!" He pulled, his strength astonishing. She was dragged free, tumbling out of the fissure and landing directly on top of him in a small, slightly more open chamber. She was breathless, her body splayed over him. Her leg was in between his, her chest crushed against his. She could feel the hammer of his heart, or maybe it was her own. Her hand was flat against his abdomen, and she felt the ridges of his muscles tense at her touch. It was an intimacy more profound than any she had ever known, purely physical, born of survival, but it ignited something deep within her. The primal pull she'd felt in the forest returned, amplified 100-fold by the darkness, the danger, and his undeniable male presence. He didn't push her off. He just lay there, his breath hot on her neck. "You're very heavy," he finally managed. His voice strained. "My suit," she whispered, but she made no move to get up. He shifted, his hands going to her waist. They were not gentle this time. They were firm, possessive. He gripped her, his thumbs pressing into the sensitive skin.
Just above her hips were the armor segmented. A sharp, involuntary gasp escaped her. No one touched her. Not ever. Not like this. His grip tightened. "General?" She should have recoiled. She should have slapped him, threatened him. Instead, she found herself tracing the line of his jaw in the dark, her green fingers mapping the rough stubble, the strong line of his bone. "Leah Lane," she whispered. "What? My name is Leah Lane." His hands at her waist stilled. Then, one hand moved, sliding up her side, over the smooth, hard plates of her armor, until his fingers found the edge of her collar. He traced it, his touch sending a jolt through her entire nervous system. "Lycan," he replied, his voice a low vibration that she felt more than heard. The air in the chamber was electric, thick with unspoken desire. The roar of the flood was a distant drumbeat, the darkness their sanctuary. This was not a general and the farmer. This was a male and the female, trapped, alive, and burning with a tension that had been building since the moment their eyes first met. He moved, rolling them both until she was pinned beneath him, the rock wall cold at her back. His weight was a comfort, not a threat. "This is madness," she breathed, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders. "Yeah," he rasped. He lowered his head, his lips brushing the sensitive skin behind her ear. She arched instinctively, her body reacting on a level her mind refused to acknowledge. "We are enemies," she panted. "Not down here." His mouth found hers. It was not a gentle kiss. It was a collision. Desperate, furious, and hungry. It was a kiss of shared fear, of profound relief, of an attraction so potent it bordered on violence. His lips were chapped, demanding, and utterly human. She responded with equal fire. Her xylos biology, so long dormant and controlled, roaring to life. She kissed him back, her fingers tangling in his short, damp hair, pulling him closer. His hand slid from her waist, moving up, his callous thumb brushing the underside of her breast through the armor. She gasped into his mouth, the sensation so foreign, so overwhelming, she thought she might shatter. He broke the kiss, their foreheads resting against each other, both of them breathing as if they just run a marathon. "We should
"Keep moving," he said, his voice rough. "Yes," she agreed, though neither of them moved. He pulled back, his hand lingering on her jaw. "There's a fissure up ahead. I think I see daylight, or a reflection of it." He stood, pulling her to her feet. The spell was broken, but the charge remained, a humming wire connecting them in the dark. They emerged hours later from a different crack in the valley wall, high above the floodline. They were caked in mud, bruised and exhausted. The valley below was unrecognizable. The flood had scoured it, leaving a trail of gray mud and debris. Her command post was gone. His farm was gone. The sun was bright, and in its harsh light, the intimacy of the mine felt like a fever dream. Leah Lane's green skin was smudged with dirt, her purple hair matted. Laken's face was streaked with her blood and his own, his shirt in tatters. A Xylos dropship screamed overhead. It was a search and rescue bird. It landed 50 yards away, its ramp slamming down. Kalen, his face a mask of grim relief, ran out, followed by 2 medics. "General, you are alive." Leah Lane automatically stepped away from Laken, her hard commanding facade snapping back into place. Laken saw the shift. The general was back. He faded back toward the shadows of the rocks. "General, report," Leah Lane ordered, her voice crisp. "Total loss, General. Vestra squad, gone. The command sphere was inundated. We've lost 70% of our ground armor to mud and water damage." "And the farmer?" she asked, not looking in Laken's direction. Kalen frowned. "No sign. We assume he was swept away with the others." Leah Lane nodded, her face unreadable. "A tragedy. He was a formidable adversary." Laken watched from the rocks, his gut tightening. She was lying. She was erasing him. Erasing them. He understood, but it still stung. "General, you are injured," Kalen said, motioning the medics forward. "It is nothing, a scratch." She turned and strode toward the dropship. Just before she stepped onto the ramp, she paused, her back to him. She subtly dropped a small silver object from her hand into the mud. Then she was gone. Laken waited until the ship was a speck in the sky before he emerged. He walked to the spot and picked up the object. It was a Xylos data chip, small and dense. He turned and looked at the ruin of his farm. His home was gone. His valley was destroyed. But he was alive. He clenched the chip in his fist. He was no longer just a farmer. He was a man with nothing left to lose, holding a piece of alien technology and a memory of a kiss in the dark that had changed everything. He now knew his enemy's name, and she knew his. Back in the salvaged secondary command post aboard the Hegemony's Will, Leah Lane was in torment. She sat in her command chair, clean and in a fresh uniform, but the memory of his hands, his mouth was a brand on her skin. "General, your new orders," Kalen said, his voice quiet. He knew her, and he knew she was different. From who? Political Officer Corvus. He is apoplectic. He is en route demanding a full withdrawal and your court-martial for the loss of assets. He is a fool, Leah Lane snapped. He is also in command of the orbiting fleet, Kalen reminded him gently. Leah Lane's hands clenched. Her career was over. Her life, likely. Unless... Kalen, I want a full sensor sweep of the valley. Look for geothermal anomalies. Heat signatures. Anything out of the ordinary. Looking for what, General? Survivor, she said, her voice tight. Meanwhile, in the ruins of his storm cellar, Laken was working. He has salvaged a generator, a laptop, and a satellite uplink. He plugged the Xylos data chip into a custom reader he'd built from parts of a downed drone. The chip contained everything: troop deployments, armor weaknesses, comms protocols, and a small encrypted personal file. He couldn't open it, but he didn't need to. The rest was enough. He began to type. Within an hour, the Xylos logistics network was in chaos. Ammunition was rerouted to non-existent coordinates. Fuel tankers were sent on priority missions to the wrong side of the planet. Her soldiers' rations were replaced with orders for high-nitrate agricultural fertilizer.
Lakin wasn't just fighting with mud and pollen anymore. He was fighting with information. He was a ghost in their machine. In the command center, Kalen was losing his mind. General, our entire supply chain is collapsing. It's not just glitches, it's malicious. Someone has breached our network. Leah Lane stared at the screen, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. So, she whispered, the farmer knows how to code. She was not angry. She was thrilled. He was alive. He was talking to her. Kalen, she said, triangulate the origin of the breach and prepare my personal shuttle. I am going on a supply inspection. General, that is madness. Corvus will have you shot. Corvus can try, Leah Lane said, her violet eyes blazing with a new, dangerous purpose. Kalen, he didn't just survive. He's better than us. She sent a single drone to the coordinates of the breach. It landed and powered down. It carried no message, no threat. It was just an offering, a piece of technology left for him. He saw it land. He walked out and examined it. It was a long-range encrypted comms unit, a private line. He powered it on. Her face appeared on the small holographic screen. They stared at each other for a long moment. You're a terrible farmer, Lakin, she said, her voice a low murmur. And you're a terrible general, Leah Lane. You lost your entire army in a puddle. A beat of silence. You're causing me a lot of trouble.
A great deal of trouble, she said. It's a gift. The tension from the mine was back, a tangible thing that stretched across the kilometers between them. Corvus is coming, she said, her voice losing its edge, becoming urgent. He's going to bomb this valley. He's going to turn it to glass. When? 24 hours. He's issued a formal ultimatum. He's taken command of the fleet. Lakin's face hardened. You can't stop him. From here, no. I am a general with no army on a planet I was sent to conquer. Then you have to leave, he said. Leave, she laughed, a bitter sound. And go where? I am a traitor to my people. And you are the man who defeated me. No, Lakin said, his hazel eyes intense. I'm the man who found you. Get to your shuttle. I have an idea. The ultimatum from political officer Corvus was blunt. General Lane was stripped of her command. Her forces were to surrender to his authority, and she was to present herself for immediate arrest. The valley would be sterilized from orbit at 0800. He's not bluffing, Leah Lane said, watching from her shuttle as Corvus's command cruiser descended, a dark spear of judgment. Neither am I. Lakin's voice came over the private comm. Get to these coordinates, now, and bring whatever loyal soldiers you have left. Loyal to what? A failed mission? Loyal to you. Leah Lane found Kalen. The political officer is purging the command staff. He intends to kill us all and blame it on the farmer. You have a choice. Stay and be executed, or come with me and fight for a chance to live. Kalen looked at the cold, hard face of Corvus on the main screen, then back to his general. He nodded. My life for yours, General. Leah Lane, Kalen, and a dozen loyal Xylo soldiers evacuated the Will in her personal shuttle, landing in the ruins of Lakin's farm. Lakin was waiting. He was not alone. He stood beside a massive, repurposed piece of farm equipment, a geothermal drill, its power core humming. He had networked it with the power cells from a dozen downed Xylos walkers and the targeting systems from her own drone. What is that? Leah Lane asked, stepping from the shuttle. It's a kinetic dampener, Lakin said. A concept anyway. I used to use it to bore through granite. It projects a localized high-energy field that, well, it stops things. Hard. You built this? From scraps? Kalen whispered, his tactical minds reeling. I'm a farmer. We're good at fixing things. Corvus's ship is heavily shielded, Leah Lane said. It won't be enough. It's not for his ship, Lakin said, his eyes on the sky. It's for his bomb. He's not just going to glass the valley. He's going to use a tectonic penetrator.
He wants to crack the whole continent. He wants to erase his failure, and you... How do you know that? I've been reading his mail, Lakin said grimly. He's dropping it in 5 minutes. Leolaine looked at the machine, then at the man. He was defiant, ingenious, and utterly magnificent. It won't be enough, she said, her voice soft. The field isn't stable. It'll stop the bomb, but the feedback will... It'll incinerate this entire area. I know, Lakin said, but it'll save the continent, my land, my choice. He was going to sacrifice himself. No, Leolaine said. She ran to the console. Kalen, get your shuttle ready for immediate takeoff. Lakin, you're an idiot. It's the only way. It's not. You're thinking like a farmer. Think like a general. She slammed her hand on the console. Your field is a hammer. I have an anvil. Link your system to my shuttle. Now, what are you doing? He wants me, Leolaine said, her violet eyes blazing as she sprinted back to her shuttle. I'm docking. She fired the engines, the shuttle screaming into the sky, linked by a hard line to Lakin's dampening field on the ground. Corvus, she broadcast on an open channel. This is General Leolaine. I am surrendering myself. I am approaching your flagship. Power down your weapons and prepare your docking bay. On the cruiser, Corvus laughed. Fool, you will be vapor. Fire the penetrator. Wait, sir, his tactical officer yelled. She's on a direct collision course. She's bluffing. Sir, the bomb is armed. Fire! The massive bomb dropped from the cruiser, a silver spear falling toward the valley. Lakin, Leolaine said, her voice calm, her eyes fixed on the looming cruiser. Activate the field and hold on. He slammed his hand on the activator. On the ground, the geothermal drill exploded with energy, a massive, shimmering shield of pure force erupting over the valley. The bomb struck it. The impact was silent, but the release of energy was blinding. The kinetic force, denied its target, was reflected upward. Lakin, Leolaine whispered, seeing her plan. The energy wave, focused by the bomb's own casing, shot back up the line of its descent, a colossal, invisible fist. It struck Corvus's cruiser. The ship's shields, calibrated for incoming fire, not a point-blank kinetic rebound from below, shattered. The ship shuddered violently, alarm screaming. Now, Leolaine hissed. She dodged the crippled cruiser, her shuttle flying through the maelstrom of energy. She didn't flee. She turned and fired her engines, accelerating directly at the flagship's main bridge. It was a game of chicken she had no intention of losing. He's damaged. His engines are down, Kalen shouted. He's dead in the water, Lakin finished. Leolaine brought her shuttle to a hard stop, hovering just 50 meters from Corvus's cracked viewport. She could see the political officer's terrified face. She opened the channel. Political Officer Corvus, this is General Leolaine. You are relieved of command. Your actions were reckless, dishonorable, and a violation of hegemony protocols. Surrender your ship, or I will finish the job this farmer started. The war for Earth was not over, but the war for Harmony Valley was. Leolaine, now a rogue general with a crippled cruiser and a single shuttle to her name, stood on the ridge overlooking the valley. The land was scarred, but it was not dead. Lakin stood beside her. Kalen and the dozen loyal Xylo soldiers were beginning the work of salvage, working side by side with the first human relief teams who had arrived, stunned to find an alien general directing cleanup. You're a traitor, Lakin said, his voice quiet. I am, Leolaine agreed. I looked at him, her violet eyes soft. My people came to crush your world. They believe strength is conquest. You taught me something else. What did you teach me? That true strength is resilience. It's a farmer who refuses to leave his harvest. It's a man in a cave, afraid, but still thinking of how to get out. Lakin's callous hand found her green one, their fingers interlaced. It felt as natural as the earth beneath their feet. So what now, General? Now, she said, leaning her head on his solid shoulder, we rebuild, you and I. We have shown both our people something new, that a bridge can be stronger than a wall. He turned, pulling her to him. His arms wrapped around her waist and he lifted her easily. His lips found hers. This kiss was not the desperate, frantic clash from the mine. It was slow and deep and full of promise. It was the scent of her alien skin and his human sweat, of ionized air from the energy field, and the smell of the damp and healing earth. It was the future. My land, he whispered against her mouth. Our land, she corrected.
Pulled him closer. Across the valley, a human soldier and a Xylos trooper, seeing their two leaders, lowered their weapons and shared a wary, confused, but hopeful glance. The first step had been taken, and it had all started because a farmer refused to run. 1 year later, Lakin walked the ridge. The air was cool, sweet with the scent of new pine and the damp black soil of the valley floor. It was spring. New grass, a vibrant, almost violent green, carpeted the scar where Corvus's bomb had been denied. The earth was healing. It was a stubborn, defiant thing, much like the man who tended it. His farmhouse stood rebuilt, not as it was, but as something new. Its foundation was the original solid river stone, but its frame was a hybrid of earth oak and salvaged Xylos alloys, gleaming a dull silver in the morning light. The roof was paneled with solar collectors, and beside them, Xylos energy siphons that drank power from the atmosphere. Below, in the main field, a human, one of the sector volunteers, worked alongside Kalin. Lelane's former tactical officer, now the chief engineer of Harmony Enclave, was demonstrating how to recalibrate a hybrid irrigation drone. Kalin looked up, saw Lakin, and raised a hand in a gesture that was half human wave, half Xylos salute. Lakin returned it. The Harmony Accords, as the media had dubbed them, were a fragile, contested thing. The war beyond the valley still simmered, a stalemate of fleets and posturing. The Xylos hegemony, humiliated by Corvus's defeat and Lelane's defection, refused to negotiate further, but they also refused to test the valley's defenses again. They had declared Lelane Vectral, soul dead, a traitor of the highest order. To humanity, she was the Green Lady of Harmony. And he was the farmer general. He'd hated the title, but it stuck. His stubbornness, his refusal to yield his land had become a symbol for the entire planet. His ingenious use of repurposed farm equipment, once a desperate act of survival, was now the core curriculum at military academies. It was the ultimate absurd triumph of the practical man. Humanity, yeah, indeed. Lakin's boots were muddy. He scraped them on the metal grate by the door and went inside. The house was quiet, filled with the smell of brewing coffee and something else, a faint, metallic, sweet scent that was uniquely hers. She was in the main room, which now served as their living space and the valley's command center. She stood before a large window, not in armor, but in a simple pair of human denim jeans and a soft, worn linen shirt. The sight of her, the juxtaposition of her vibrant green skin and purple hair against the mundane, comfortable human clothing, still made his heart ache. She was not looking at the view. Her violet eyes were focused on a holographic data pad, her brow furrowed in the same intense concentration she had once used to plan invasions. "You're going to burn a hole in that thing," he said, his voice a low rumble. Lelane didn't look up, but a small smile touched her lips. "Your soil composition is infuriatingly inconsistent. The nitrogen levels in the upper pasture are suboptimal for the hybrid grain Kalin is proposing. Your ancient wisdom is in this case inefficient." He came up behind her, sliding his arms around her waist. He pressed his face into the curve of her neck, inhaling her scent. His rough, bearded cheek scraped gently against her smooth skin. She leaned back against his solid frame, her body fitting against it as if made for it. "It's called crop rotation, General. I'll handle the nitrogen, you handle the orbital trajectories."
"I am handling the nitrogen," she murmured, her hands coming up to cover his. His hands were scarred, calloused, and twice the size of hers. They were a farmer's hands, a builder's hands. They were the hands that had saved her, held her, and claimed her in the dark. "This past year," she said, her voice soft, "it has been difficult." "It's been hell," he agreed, his lips brushing her temple. "I do not have nightmares," she said a little too quickly. "You shout in Xylos," he countered gently. "I don't know the words, but I know the sound of fear." She turned in his arms, her hands sliding up his chest, her violet eyes no longer sharp with command but deep with a profound, steady love met his. "I am not afraid, not with you." She traced the line of his jaw. "But I miss my world. I miss the stars I knew." "We'll see them again," he promised. "One day, when they're ready to listen. And if they are not, then we've got the best view in the galaxy right here." He lowered his head, and she met him halfway. The kiss was no longer the desperate, frantic clash of the mine. It was a long, slow burn. It was 1,000 shared meals, 1,000 quiet mornings, 1,000 nights of falling asleep tangled together. It was the absolute, grounded certainty of their connection. His human strength, her alien grace, fused into something new. He pulled her closer, his hand sliding from her waist, moving up her side. He knew every line of her body, the hard-earned muscle, the soft, sensitive skin of her flanks. She was a warrior, a general, a strategist, and she was his. "You've ruined me, farmer," she whispered against his mouth, her fingers tangling in his short, dark hair. "I was a conqueror." "You still are, Lelaine," he murmured, lifting her effortlessly from the floor. He carried her toward their bedroom, her legs wrapping around his waist. "You just narrowed your focus." She laughed, a low, throaty sound that was still alien and entirely hers. Outside, the hybrid drone rose into the air, Kaelin watching it with a satisfied nod. The valley was safe, the work continued, and in the house built of wood and stars, the future they had forged together, a future that should not have existed, was secure.